Cool. Everyone able to see that? Is that good? Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So today's goal is to just pretty much go over this abstract writing workshop and to help prep you guys to write that abstract for the undergraduate biology research program poster session, which is very exciting. So let's get started. So yeah, the goal is to make sure you know what to expect and just provide guidance on how to really start that writing abstract. The deadline is December 1st. So make sure you keep that in mind, and you should be able to submit it through the Qualtrics, which Jen has sent through that one email. If you need help accessing that, please let us know. So just overall agenda is to talk about what is an abstract, the overall structure of it, and how to use your abstract to convert it into a poster. And then we have some wonderful people giving us examples of their past posters and abstract and how they implemented their abstract into a poster. Yeah. And then I also have a template at the end that could be helpful for you to start your abstract. So what it is, very simply, it is just a concise summary of your research. Now, there's a lot of freedom with what you do with this, but there are some general guidelines on what an abstract should entail. So some things to keep in mind is that this abstract is for the purpose of providing a summary for your paper, thesis, or just your overall poster that you'll be presenting at a conference. While UBRP is great in the sense that you just need to send an abstract and you'll be able to present your poster, many other conferences require you to send in your abstract for review, and if they like the content and if it aligns with what their conference represents, they'll use that abstract as an acceptance for your presentation. So you want to make sure that your abstract provides all the information another individual would expect when trying to learn about the research you do and what they can gain from the research. And so since it's a topic on just your research, it should be completely your own original work. So no citations or references should be needed. And just in general, be considerate of your audience. What age range are they in? What's their background? Do they have a scientific background? If they don't, maybe you should use more less complex diction for them to better understand. And you want to make sure it's objective, so you want to use third-person point of view. Now for UBRP, the abstract should be around 300 words. It may vary for other conferences. Some abstracts can be only 200 words, but for now, we really encourage 300 words. Excuse me. So even though 300 words compared to 200 is a lot more, it's still not a lot. And so it's smart to be concise and really make sure you get all the details about your research implemented into your writing. Now for the structure, what's really nice is that it's very easy to get all your information in if you follow these sections. Now, of course, these sections are up for debate. The ones I like to use are introduction, methods, results, and further discussions. I feel those are the big main points that you want to address in your abstract to give a good overview of what your research entails. So to start with, introduction, you want to talk about what is known. Especially in the field of your research interest. It's a good idea to get the bigger idea included in your research. That way you can really incorporate why your research specifically is important and how it contributes to the greater field. And then you also want to talk about what is unknown in that field in the sense that you want to add to what is unknown. You want to answer those questions, and that way it also emphasizes how important your research is. So what do we know about this certain field? And how are you working to answer that unknown? So you can also state your thesis, claim, or hypothesis in this section, but try to limit this to 1 to 2 sentences for the introduction. But of course it can vary. And then the other sections for methods, you want to talk about what you did to approach these questions. So this could be observational, theoretical, experimental. In it's highly recommended that you don't go too in depth with the methods you took, but whatever main ideas you think are important should be involved. So for example, if you did field work, you should talk about where you did field work and how the data you collected will be implemented into your results. So of course, in the results, you want to talk about what you found or what you didn't find. No matter what, results are results and they're cool. So don't be afraid to be vague in the sense you can say, so far we are leaning more towards this, even if we don't have direct results, but yeah. And then last but not least, you want to tie it all back together into the main idea and why your research is important by addressing the further discussion. So what does your results imply, or what will it imply, and how they will add to the greater picture of the research field that you're working in. Cool. And so what's really nice about writing an abstract before working on your poster is that the sections you use can be easily transferable to your posters. And a lot of the research that you'll be doing to get that bigger idea, to make sure you understand where you are in your field, you can use the references that you use to get that better idea into your poster. And so to really show this process, we have 3 examples. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Bryce, I forgot to change that. But you can talk about it yourself. So we have Bryce and Jackie in my examples. And so we all submitted and presented at different conferences. And so we can also talk about how we adjusted our specific audience or diction for our specific unique audience for that conference. So starting with mine, a little bit about my project is that I've worked with fungal endophytes, foliar endophytes, which are basically just microscopic fungi living in the leaves of plants. For me specifically, I'm also interested in the berries and identifying what the fungal community is in there. And so by doing this, I went to Alaska, did some field work, did some DNA extraction, and I'm still working on analyzing the data, but I was still able to present on the work I'm doing now. So I'm gonna see if I can annotate real quick. I'm not expecting anyone to really look too in detail with this. I will go over it myself, but I do want to point out that I did use this 4-section method to help guide myself through that storyline that I wanted to present in my abstract. And so at the very beginning, I gave, oh my God, this is not what I wanted. Let's see, is there a highlighter? Let's try this. Okay. I'll just underline it, I guess, not very well. But yeah. So the very first section, I talk about my introductions. This little section, not well drawn, but yeah, I talk about the species that I'm working with, why they're important, and why it's important to address these situations now. I talked about how the species I'm working with are a huge source of food for wildlife and indigenous community. And I'm also talking about how climate change is occurring, making these things unpredictable, and it's unsure and it's unknown how these changes will affect this important source of food. And so that's what my goal is that is the goal of my research of what it's trying to address. And then I give a very brief few sentences about the methods that I'm working with. We don't really need to go with that, but I did point out where I did field research, what species what species I'm working with. Oh my God, this is very wrong, sorry. Which databases I don't know what's going on, but that's my methods. So you can see I wrote a lot for methods, but I think that's the most important part for my research, since I technically don't really have results yet. And so I really want to talk about the work that I've been doing so far. And then at the end, I talk about the potential of the knowledge that we'll receive from this and how we'll implement it into further research and what next steps will be taken. Oh, okay. So with all of this, oh, sorry. Oh God. I will fix this later. But I was able to create this poster, and you can see it's a bit more dense than the abstract, but in general, a lot of the information I put in my poster has been copy and pasted. So especially for the background, the sections where I highlighted for my introduction, I mostly copy and pasted. I did add references to make my statements more credible. And then here I have methods where I went more in detail about specific steps I took. And then a lot of the poster space has images to help audience better understand the preliminary results I've been getting. And so I do have a results section where I list the main points. And then I also have the discussion section where I built off of my results and talked about how this contributes to the bigger field. Yeah. Okay. Grace, if you want to go next, I'm gonna figure out how to do this.
Yeah, I guess so while you're clearing the annotations. So yeah, so my work is kind of in the realm of cancer biology, but focusing mainly on oxidative stress. So there are these molecules called reactive oxygen species that have a super important role both in normal cell functioning and encouraging growth and division. But then when their levels get too high, they can cause a lot of damage, and they're implicated a lot in cancer. So yeah, for my abstract, let me try to figure out the annotations. So this first section, hopefully you can read that. uh, I guess kind of up until here, this all is pretty much introduction. I'm just gonna delete that. And then, yeah, so that's kind of all introduction, but it's really kind of important introduction into how what my project actually goes over as far as transcription factor dynamics and these really important proteins that kind of the basis of my project was centered around the peroxyredoxins. So yeah, that first kind of whole section is introduction. And then I didn't really talk that much about my methods at all. Mainly just because I talked about them on my actual poster a bit, and I have a lot. This work was over like 15 months, so I have a lot of actual results. So I kind of tried to focus on the results and try to get as many of the results as I could into the short word limit. And this abstract I originally submitted for the Society for Redox Biology and Medicine conference. And it was accepted for that conference, but I didn't actually end up going to that conference, but I did present it at a different symposium in LA, the Beckman Symposium. But anyway, and then this kind of all the way up until this sentence are most of my results. So I go over how there's like these two different groups of transcription factors, and they're activated differentially depending on the time after hydrogen peroxide stress is added. And then we implicated these antioxidant enzymes in controlling this role. And then the last kind of two sentences are going more into how peroxyroxins might be regulating this kind of speculation or discussion aspects of the abstract. And then this was my poster. So I tried to, the first poster that I ever made was for the UBRP conference last January, and I had a ton of words on it. It was a very wordy poster, and I didn't really include that many pictures. So for this poster, I really tried to use a lot more images to try to explain concepts and a lot more of my actual data and images to kind of demonstrate my results a lot more. So it's definitely very, very visual. But yeah, and then in my underneath every figure and image, I have a brief description kind of going over what methods were used, and just like a brief description of it. But yeah, kind of just mostly going through the results, which is a lot of my abstract as well. But then and then this kind of last section over here is kind of summarizing, or I guess explaining more, those last two sentences in my abstract, which I was just going over, kind of like broader implications is kind of what I put on the end of that side of the poster. Yeah.
Okay, so for mine, when for last year for UBRP, I didn't really have like a project going on. It was more like it was like a work in progress developing type of thing. So mine was more just kind of giving like the general idea of like what the project was that I was working on, the big one. And then I would also like talk a little bit, like I mentioned, like what my future project might be. So similar to Ariel's and Bryce's, you include like an introduction of like whatever your science or your research is based on. You can give like a quick little summary and mention in a couple methods, but don't like stress too much about it. Like you don't need to have like a lot of information. Like maybe if you're like barely starting out like with your research, or maybe they've only had you read a couple papers and you don't have like something concrete, you can also just talk about that, like what you've been like looking into, like literature review. That's like also helpful to include like in your abstract, so that people have like a general idea of like what your lab is about and what you're hoping to focus on. Another thing, try to include like numbers if you can. Like if you do have data or results, numbers are really cool and to have in, like brings people like or attracts people more to your abstract. So I have like percentages and centimeters squared, but obviously your research will look a little different. I also talked a little bit about like surveys. I completed a couple surveys in my lab. And so I talked about like social demographic information. And then again, reiterating what the other two have said, you just kind of talk about like your methods, like how you collected the information. The way you like format like the abstract, Ariel will include like a template, so you can just base off of that. But essentially like you just have your title and then like all the different authors, like including like the research or PhD students. So sometimes it's kind of hard to get their information. But if they did like contribute to the project, you do have to include them. So just be sure that you give enough time to like collect all that information before like the December 1st deadline. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so this was my poster for UBRP in the January conference. So again, I did not really have like my own project. So I was kind of mostly giving like a rundown of the EPA project that I was helping them with. So I was mostly helping like with field inspections and collecting data. So it was like the EPA funded soil and dust ingestion with young children. So between children between the ages of 6 months to 6 years. And essentially we would go to people's homes in Tucson, Nogales, and Phoenix area. And we would kind of record the kids like in their normal playing activities. And we would also just like collect like soil from the outside and in the pots inside the house and do dust wipes and stuff like that. So anyways, that was like my other poster was mostly talked about, and then I had just included like a little section of like what I would be talking about. I did send Ariel the wrong one, so this one is like for another conference that I ended up going to, but this one is like my project. But I just want to let you know for UBRP, I didn't have like a project at all. It was just like a little piece that I just included what my future thing would be. But essentially, like, yes, like I included, you can kind of like play around with it and do like different types of shapes to like run down like the methods. Try to like make it like, easy to read for people. And mostly like the audience that is going to be going, it's like people from your lab, your friends, peers, other UBRP students are going to be going around and reading your poster. So try to have like a couple places where like it like really stands out and you can like definitely give some pointers. Because usually typically people will be at your poster for maybe if they're like just like doing a quick look, it's like 10 seconds. If they're actually gonna sit and talk to you, they'll be there for a couple minutes so you can give like your little spiel. Um, but yeah, just remember to have like a couple pointers if you just want people to remember something if they're just passing right through. But yeah, pictures are important. People like to look at pictures and not too many wordy things. If you can include like graphs, charts, any kinds of diagrams, that's also like really helpful. Tables are also helpful to read. And then also for this poster, I'm not sure if the UBRP posters require it, but in some conferences, you do have to are required to mention if there's a conflict of interest. So I don't think UBRP does, I don't know, Ben, but essentially like for future conferences, if you are interested in doing that, just be sure to include that. And also just to add on to like what Ariel had said previously, for other conferences, they usually they have like a list of rules like on their page for how they want the abstract organized. So it's like if you are like working on that, just be sure to double check that, because if you maybe missed the word count, or maybe you didn't include something you were supposed to include, they will automatically take that out. So just like so you know, for future conferences, which I hope you'll all be able to go to. But yeah, that's it. That's it for my poster.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys for sharing. You guys all raised amazing points. For UBRP specifically, I think it's fair to say that majority of our audience will be other peers and other professors. So they all will, in general, be in the research field. So you don't need to stray away from words like polymerase chain reaction or PCR, rather than using like just DNA extraction. So yeah, but keep in mind there will be other people in other fields, so they may not be familiar with terms that you may know or use commonly in your lab. I work in a fungi lab, so I don't really know anything about chemicals. I don't know if that's a good comparison, but yeah, so just be aware that people are typically really friendly with UBRP, so I wouldn't worry about presentation. Yeah, cool.
Oh, can I make a comment?
Yes, of course.
Quite a few of the people who will be at the UBRP conference are like people's parents who might not do anything related to science. So I think practicing as much as possible, using like removing jargon from your language is best practice. Just as a rule of thumb, if you can explain something in simpler terms, the scientists who understand the more complicated terms will understand what you mean, and the people who don't understand the scientific terms will also understand what you mean. So as much jargon as you can get rid of as possible is great. But you probably, if you slip up and can't think of a better way to say it, then you're probably not going to have any problems at the UBRP conference. But just a food for thought.
Yeah, definitely. Cool, nice, yeah. So I do have a little template activity that you can do on your own time or now, mostly just questions for you to answer in regards to your own research. So what is the point of your research basically? Why are you asking that question? How would you describe it to varying levels of individuals? So say age from, so what would you say to a middle schooler? What would you say to a high schooler? What would you say to a PhD individual? Being able to answer that question with varying degrees is something that you can consider. What do people already know about this topic? So really getting that answer for your introduction. Why is your research important? Which can be either noted in the introduction or further discussion section. How did you investigate this question, which can answer your method section. What did you find for your results? And how does your results contribute to the big idea, and ending with the further discussion section as well. And of course, everyone has different kinds of projects, so it's totally fair to rearrange those sections, whichever fits and aligns with your story the best, but that is up to you. So definitely work with your mentor to figure out what kind of story you guys want to tell together and how they can help, and they can definitely help you figure that out. And yeah, I will be sending this recording to Jennifer, and also the slides, so you can refer to that as well. But if you guys have any questions, please let us know. I put my email in Bryce's and Jackie's if you want any peer review help, or just have any questions. Of course, ask Quinn if you have any UBRP conference specific questions. But yeah, so I think that's it. Thank you so much for attending this little workshop. I hope it was helpful, and let us know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks for coming, Hannah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for giving this presentation. It's been so helpful. I'm kind of struggling trying to figure out what to do because I have a different situation. So I did drop my lab